The time has come again, the season where the nights are longer, the winds howl, and chills will reach to the back of your spine. This is supposed to be a Christmas video, right? Yes, but I was setting something up. Happy holidays, everyone. I just finished my Christmas shopping and getting ready for some holly jolly fun. But before we do that, let's have a different kind of fun. Fun that's less holly and jolly and more spine tingling as we follow the Shadow of St. Nicholas, Krampus, in particular, the tie-in to the 2015 horror film. Before I can get into that, I should explain a bit of who Krampus is. Dating as far back as the 1600s in German folklore, Krampus was the boogeyman to scare young children during the winter season. But when Christianity began to spread, along with the Christmas holiday, Krampus became associated with St. Nicholas. As the patron saint rewarded the good children, Krampus, depending on where you lived, would either beat the children with a rod, eat them, or drag them to hell, or D, all of the above. As time went on, the idea of St. Nicholas / Santa having a dark counterpart to punish children would spread, leading to different interpretations of him. Mike Pierrefontaine in France, or Klapoff in Austria, and even had a version where there was more than one. He would even have his own holiday in Germany called Krampusnacht, or Krampus Night, every early December. With all that, you would think Krampus would have a ton of adaptations. Well, yes, outside the US, at least for a while. Hell, the first time I would even learn about Krampus was in the show Venture Brothers in 2004. Krampus would get more love in comics, like facing Hellboy, being a supporting character in the comedy series Jingle Bell, and even a few comics with him as the main character, as either the antagonist or a protagonist. He wouldn't make it big on screen until the aforementioned horror film. Written and directed by Michael Daltrey, the same guy who brought us the classic Halloween horror, Trick or Treat, Krampus revolves around a family fighting with one another 3 days before Christmas, leading to one of the kids, Max, declaring that he hates the holiday and his family, wishing he never had them, ending with him ripping up his letter to Santa and throwing it out the window. And though Santa never reads his letter, someone would get it. A massive blizzard surrounds the house, and though each tried to get out of the blizzard, they were forced to stay inside. All but Max's older sister, who's the first to meet Krampus's little helpers. Later that night, the same would happen to one of the kids, who would be taken up the chimney by a bunch of pissed off gingerbread men, leading to the grandmother revealing that she faced this before, as when she was a child, lost faith in the holiday, along with her family, leading to Krampus to come and drag her family to the underworld, leaving her behind. The family don't believe it at first, but quickly change their tune as they encounter the living gingerbread men, man-eating toys, and dark elves, leading to eventually Krampus himself. Now, I won't spoil the ending, but it's definitely a film I recommend checking out for yourself. It's creepy, it's fun, and a good way to ease your friends into the horror genre, if they're a bit squeamish. Though heads up, the Jack-in-the-Box scene is gnarly. Anyway, I love this film, but how'd the comic tie-in hold up? Well, let's dive into Krampus, the Shadow of St. Nicholas, and find out. Warning, spoilers. Now, this is an anthology, as we have 3 stories and an epilogue, with the first focusing on a department store's employees dealing with a drunk Santa under their employment. The guy is a train wreck, treats kids like crap, and is a bit of a perv to the mothers of said kids. Henry Corwin, this man is not. The store manager, Steve, is actually ready to fire the guy, but one of the other employees, a woman by the name of Audrey, talks him into giving him one more chance, as she doesn't really have the heart to see such a poor bastard out in the streets during the Christmas season. Now, she's not a pushover. Audrey makes it clear that he has to get his act together or it's going to end poorly and celebrate Christmas alone. He does try to retaliate by saying that he has tons of friends. Unfortunately, said friends are either dead or in jail, and though Audrey does try to help him get a ride home, he tries to drive while drunk off his ass. He crashes the car, but only ends up with a concussion and passes out. Steve and Audrey end up patching him up and letting him rest on the couch in Steve's office. When he wakes up, he finds that his holiday troubles have just gotten started. The store has been hit with a blizzard that's keeping the people in. Steve and Audrey try to keep the peace, but things get complicated as Santa is still trying to get drunk, but Audrey knocks the bottle out of his hand and tells him to watch over the kids that are still in the store, while she goes to find some food in the freezer section, only to find a frozen horrorland as she finds some trapped customers frozen to death and Steve hiding from them. Krampus versus giant ants. I'd watch that. Actually, he's talking about the dark elves of the film, but Santa and the others don't buy that, at least until he meets another fellow in a big red coat. Now, of course, there's more, but let's move on to the next story. We meet Officer Kim visiting her sister's grave on Christmas Eve. She was a victim of a hit and run on Christmas, and Kim has been spending these past Christmases trying to find the guy, despite her mother wanting her to celebrate with her family. family. Though the holidays come to her as she almost hits an elf. Hey, you have been doing the guy a favor. He was gonna be forced to do elf bowling. She avoids hitting him, but still finds trouble as she catches a thief trying to rob a family. Where's Joe Swanson when you need wait, that was retconned, or was it? It doesn't matter. Kim stops him, but turns out the robber, Rick, had robbed half the neighborhood, so it forces him to go back to each of the houses and return their gifts. And that's the end of the story. Quick but sweet. Wait, didn't you almost run over an elf earlier? They find the last house barren, covered in frost. All through the house, not a creature stirring, not even a mouse. Pissed off toys and elves, on the other hand. They escape to the car, but one of the elves actually try to bum a ride with them, and though they're able to get him out, Kim soon realizes that their encounter wasn't a coincidence, as her story goes on. The third and final story is actually kind of a take on the classic story A Christmas Carol. Surprised it took me this long to cover a comic that does that. A foster family was forced out of their home during a blizzard and ended up trying to find refuge in the home of Tad Fuchsen, who bought their home and unfortunately had it demolished. One of the adults, Bill, decided to break into his house and stay there for Christmas, as they're under the belief that he was out of town. Yeah, they're way off. Tad finds them, and he's actually more like Bill Sykes than Scrooge. I mean, yeah, I get it, they broke into your house, but he gets borderline psychotic as, yeah, they're clearly not threats. In fact, one of them, I believe, is suffering some form of dementia. Hell, they didn't even put up a fight. You could have just kicked him out. I mean, still dickish, but still. Before he can go any further, the power goes off, and look, by this point, you can kind of figure out what happens next. The elves and toys begin to attack, destroying the house, and Tad finding himself wandering into Krampus' own workshop. Yeah, apparently Krampus likes to bring home with him. Then things get trippy as we reach the temporal elements of the classic tale. No ghosts though, the elves and toys do all the work as he sees his past, present, and future. As for what that future holds, you'll have to read to find out. This is a fun comic, but does have pacing issues with the stories. Mostly in the third, as I feel we jump from scene to scene just too fast, giving me some tonal whiplash. Like for one scene, we could have them just celebrating the fact that they're not going to be out in the cold while some of the older characters are, yeah, doing some stuff they shouldn't really be doing. Bam, boom, this guy's gonna blow your brains out. I mean, it gets a little bit better when Tad goes through time, but still, it's a little weird. As for the other two, my favorite is definitely the first, as it was interesting to see Krampus and the elves manipulate the environments besides the outside or the house like in the film. Of course, we do see several callbacks from the film, like the snowmen that appear whenever Krampus gets closer, the nightmare-inducing Jack-in-the-Box, Der Clown, and Percha the Angel. The second story is fine, and definitely is the most action-packed, as, yeah, being a cop, she's packing heat, but it's a little bit more predictable. As the story goes on, and we learn more about Kim and Rick, especially when we learn more about Rick. Docher didn't write this, but his co-writer, Todd Casey, who's not unfamiliar with anthologies, as he was one of the writers for the Green Lantern animated film Emerald Knight, did return, and was assisted by Zach Shield, who helped produce Krampus, but as a writer would be known for Godzilla vs. Kong. It's not clear if they each did a story or did it together, but if it's the former, I can kind of guess that Shield worked on the second. As his writing is, well, not terrible, but a tad bit more predictable or incomplete. Like, there should have been like a second or third draft of this. Moving on to characters, of course, we'll start with Krampus. He's a force of nature throughout. By never talking and having a handful of scenes, you feel his presence. That, like the jolly old elf, is always watching the characters, manipulating them in ways that we don't really think about until the very end. He's a fun enigma because you're never really sure if he enjoys what he's doing, but either way, we are. Next, we got the man dressed as his better half, Store Santa. He never gets a real name. And his co-worker slash sort of friends, Steve and Audrey. Santa is the classic poor bastard, as it's clear he's had a rough life, and possibly has, along with his alcoholism, PTSD. It's sort of implied that he may have been a soldier. Steve is meant to be kind of the buzzkill who wants to be the hero, but gets psyched out a lot, which, yeah, granted that these are killer elves, I can't blame him. Audrey's the heart of the trio, wants to help people, but will kick ass if someone tries to push her around. I really like their back and forth, and honestly, if they want to do a movie with these characters, I'm all for it. Next, we got Kim and Ricky, and as I mentioned before, they're pretty much the paint-by-numbers, unorthodox duo, as the serious cop and the reluctant con man forced to work together to fight the elves and toys, which in the world of comics happens more often than you think. We kind of have an idea of where their story's going, with Kim unable to get past her sister's death and Ricky's self-loathing, as he's obviously not proud of pulling a Grinch. And look, they're not bad character arcs, but it's been done so many times, and the story really doesn't do anything to make it really that unique, so it's not as impactful for the reader. Not bad, but nothing to call home about. Next, I'm going to talk about Tad Fuchsen, who, as I said before, is a real piece of reindeer chocolate, if you know what I mean. Again, I get being pissed off at them breaking into his house, but the way he acts is borderline psychotic. He's on the edge of losing his mind after what he's been through in his life, which of course doesn't justify, but it's still tragic. However, as I mentioned before, the pacing is a little bit off, so his all-around arc never truly feels completed, but that might just be me. The art varies for each story. The best I feel, once again, is the first story by Christian Dabari, as it has a sense of trying to keep control, but acting wild in the end. Manhouse is fine, but much like the entirety of the second story, kind of feels like it's playing it safe. Stuart Sager, for the third, is a bit too wild, and kind of gets to the point where it's hard to tell what you're looking at. As for the last artist, Michael Montent, it's fine, similar to House, though a bit more controlled, but it helps set up the tone of the ending it's going for. On a whole, I'd recommend Krampus, The Shadow of St. Nicholas. Yeah, not the greatest continuation, but still a fun read, and I would like to see them maybe explore some of these stories and characters in a film, if it ever gets a sequel. So yeah, I'd check it twice. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates. Next time, well, let's just say we're not done with Krampus. For his next visit, he's gonna go to a nice little city known as Gotham. Later.